A very, very long time ago, it is said that a big bang occurred or something similar where there was this huge release of primordial energy, essentially from a concentrated form exploding outwards, creating all that is now contained in our universe. Oneness exploding out into everything. What I always find interesting about going back to this is the idea of quantum entanglement. And if you're not aware of what quantum entanglement is, essentially it is this idea that if you have two particles that are joined together, they are connected, they can communicate and activate together simultaneously without distance or time and space needing to be involved. And so, for example, if you were to stimulate one of these particles that are entangled, it would automatically activate whatever that is in the other particle, regardless of distance. It could be millions of miles away and they would happen simultaneously. Yet if at one point all matter, all energy, all everything in our universe was concentrated together and then exploded outward, would it be okay to say that that means everything that we know of in our universe is technically entangled? That everything is actually connected and has the ability to communicate with each other, activate alongside each other, regardless of distance or time and space. And I always think, is this kind of one of the reasons why the law of attraction works? Because everything is entangled. When you think of something, it corresponds with something in the field. It communicates with it or lights it up and starts drawing whatever that thing is towards you. Now, I believe this is a huge part to how manifestation and creation actually works. And once you become aware of this and learn to master it, you can become an incredibly powerful creator indeed. So we're going to cover some very powerful stuff today so that you can become that powerful creator. And once you understand how this ties into quantum entanglement and how powerful your thoughts and everything else are in relationship to this, it's going to blow your mind and allow you to create in ways that you never thought possible. In fact, this is not just speculation, this is not just theory, there is actual science behind that, and we're going to give you some kind of pointers in that direction throughout this video. Now, what are some things we need to understand about how our reality operates and why this works? Well, there's a couple of things I want to mention first, and this is one of the core principles of how our reality operates, and it's simply this, that the outer follows the inner. And this is something you always have to keep in mind, and we'll explain what those both mean. The outer world of form is always taking cues and is following the inner world of thought, emotion, and your connection to, let's just say, something higher, the divine, whatever else you want to call it. What you are doing from that inner world place is a lot of times going to dictate, in fact, all of the time dictate what follows in the outer. You see, why is this? You might ask, well, why is that the case? Why is it what I do inwardly? And again, when we say inwardly, we're talking about the non-physical aspects of yourself, the thoughts, the emotions, the visualizations, this kind of things. Where is your attention when it comes to that? How are you feeling most of the time? What are you thinking about? The reason for that is because energy, the inner and outer world, are actually the same thing of a like kind, just different rates of vibration. If we go back to Hermetic wisdom, which is an amazing body of work, we can look at such principles like the principle of polarity, the principle of vibration, the principle of correspondence. But ultimately, understand this, that energy, and the words we could also use for this are spirit. Another one we could use is consciousness, who the founder, or not the founder, but the kind of granddaddy, main person of quantum mechanics, Max Planck, essentially is quoted as saying that matter is derivative of consciousness. Consciousness is primary. It is the main thing. That concentrated ball I had that I was talking about, how it exploded outward and created everything, that is energy, right? And exploded outward to create everything that we have in our universe. So everything that's within our universe, including physical matter reality, is the same stuff as energy, as thought, as whatever else, just at a different rate of vibration. Principle of vibration being another Hermetic principle. So everything on this pole, and down here, now you probably know, is physical, is actually made up of the same stuff. You've heard this before. Everything is energy. The only difference is its rate of vibration, or we could say frequency. Think of another way frequency is used, how that's termed, how that's defined. Frequency as in speed, what's its frequency, right? Its frequency of vibration determines where it is on this pole. And you can think of this pole as kind of infinite modes of vibration, right? Different vibration at different frequencies. When we start getting to a denser rate of vibration, that's when we start having things show up in the physical. It is a denser rate of vibration. If you were to look at the physical stuff in your world under the right scientific instruments, you would actually see that it's a dense rate of vibration. It's kind of very slow, kind of in place rate of vibration, to the point where we can't see it. You know, if I pick up this eraser, you can't see it vibrating with your physical eyes. You can't really do that, not normally, unless you have some kind of ability. But ultimately, it is still vibrating, even though it appears not to. It's just vibrating so densely and kind of in place that it appears solid. Yet if we were to speed up the vibration of it, so went further up this pole, it would actually cease to be in the form of the physical, because it needs to be within a certain frequency of vibration for something to be physical. It is a denser, slower rate of vibration, where when you go higher in rates of vibration, that's when you're getting to pure energy, spirit, and consciousness. So I want you to understand these two concepts as we move on, because it's going to help with the rest of it. That the outer world follows the inner. Again, the inner is more of the stuff we could say is happening at the higher end of the pole, while the outer is what follows. Now remember that this is what leads to that. What you focus on in this place from that level of frequency and vibration is what determines what shows up in the physical. And again, I'm not just getting this from nowhere, or it's like, oh, it's wishful thinking and that's what I hope. There is science that backs this up. There is data. There are ancient civilizations and teachers and so many more who point in this direction. And also, if you just try this, you will see it to be true for yourself. The outer follows the inner. This is also known as the mirror principle. I've talked about this before. It's just kind of in a nutshell what the mirror principle is saying. There's obviously more nuance, but ultimately the mirror principle is that the outer world will follow the inner. The inner world, what you're doing there, will eventually be reflected in the outer world, except it takes a while to change in the mirror, because you have to be essentially reflecting that out long enough for it to show up. And that's going to be important for you to keep in mind later. It's, again, what you are focusing on long enough or activating inwardly, which starts to show up in the denser rate of vibration. Because it takes a lot for that vibration to start getting slower and slower and denser and denser. And so it needs a lot of focus and attention and energy for that to occur, which is crucial to know if you want to create your reality, because you can kind of deduce from that, oh, the more I focus on a particular energy, a particular thing, that gives it more chance to physicalize, which again, all physicalize means is it comes down into the frequency or the narrow bandwidth that we call the physical realm, right? It's all the same thing, but the way in which it appears is based on its rate of vibration. So next, I want to give you a quote. I'm going to read the quote for you because I don't have all of it here. But ultimately, this is from an amazing book called The Field. And what's really cool about this book is by Lynn McTaggart. And what's really cool is she, is not a scientist or researcher herself, but she enlisted the help of some of the most cutting edge researchers, scientists, and so on in kind of developing research and everything else kind of on the edges of science that are pushing the boundaries in kind of the new frontier of science. And so she basically was trained by them. She asked them a bunch of questions. They kind of showed her what was going on. They showed her the experiments that showed that basically this is the case and what we're going to be going over. And so if you want to look more into it, I highly recommend this book, The Field. You know, the quest for the secret force of the universe kind of interconnects all of us. It's not just going to be, again, some esotericism. It's going to knit it together with scientific data. And even she says herself, she's not into esotericism or all these things. She wants hard facts, data, everything tracked, all of that kind of stuff before she would believe something. And she went out and did that. So if you're someone like that, or just, in general want to learn more about this, I highly recommend that book. But from the book, we have this quote right here, so I'll step aside so you can read it. And basically the whole quote is, "We and our universe live in a quantum sea of light. Matter is simply concentrations of this energy. All life is energy, or light, interacting. The universe is self-regenerating, constantly in touch with every other part of itself, instantaneously." And so it brings us back to this idea of quantum mechanics or quantum entanglement, that it is in touch with every part of itself instantaneously. Everything is entangled, right? And so what you bring into your life is not a matter of luck or chance. It is simply about what you're going to activate in the field through the inner long enough that it can come into the outer, because through quantum entanglement and activating that on both sides of yourself, so again, on the inner to the outer, you start to draw it towards you. You are literally connected to absolutely everything. It's like you have an infinite buffet laid out around you, but you can only focus on one thing in the buffet at a time. And so a lot of people are trying to create their lives while focusing on a part of the buffet they don't enjoy. And we'll go over this analogy a little more and how we can switch this. When in reality, you have the choice of everything because you are literally connected and entangled with everything. But it's your powers of focus and attention and a few other things that are going to determine what you draw in to your life. And so ultimately, you've heard the quote, you get what you think about most of the time. This is one of the reasons, because your thoughts are one of the ways in which you direct your intention or attention, your intention, again, inwardly, attention outwardly as well. We could say just attention on the inner stuff as well. But ultimately, you get what you think about because what you're thinking about is sending this message out into the field that is then through this quantum entanglement, because you're entangled with everything, activating whatever it is you're thinking about, and then drawing that thing to you. Think of it like you're giving energy to something in the field. It is lighting up, and what you light up the brightest is what starts to come into your life physically after enough time, after you focused on the energy, spirit, or consciousness of whatever that thing is. This is why someone who's always worrying and always is stressed always has more things to worry and stress about come into their lives. Why someone who is incredibly negative sends out those thoughts, sends out that energy, activates that in the field. Again, they could choose anything from the field, but they choose that, and more of that starts coming in their life through different circumstances, people, events, and everything else. Now, also from the field is this quote, directed thoughts have a central, that's a key word there, a central participatory role in creating reality. Again, this is not just coming from me. This is not just coming from esotericism. This is coming from research, data. This is coming from science. That directed thoughts have a central participatory role in creating reality. That is directly from the book. You get what you think about most of the time. And again, I highlight the word central, because it's basically saying it's one of the biggest things in what is creating your reality. It's not just this thing you want to dismiss. Again, you have 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day, but most people don't monitor them. They don't train them. They don't do anything with them. They just let whatever come in, and then wonder why their life isn't what they want it to be. Because you need to consciously be able to direct your thoughts if you want to create what it is you want for yourself, because directed thoughts have a central participatory role in creating your reality. Now, what thoughts are actually going to do is activate certain things in the field. Now, what's it activating? Well, it's whatever you're directing your thoughts towards. Again, you could be activating, just to make it simple, positive things or negative things depending on your thoughts, because you get what you think about. You could be activating things that bring about more abundance in your life, more health, better relationships, whatever it is. Or you could be activating things that keep things the same, or you could be activating things that make things worse. It's all available. It's dependent on what you activate, what thoughts that you entertain and send out, and also, again, with your energy and other things that we could consider the inner world. Now, when it comes to this, also understand that how we get it to this denser rate of vibration is through focus and concentration. If you think and activate a thought in the field, or activate something in the field through a thought, through an emotion, whatever it is you're doing, and you do it once or twice, or it's something you do every now and again, well, you're not going to expect this denser rate of vibration that corresponds with that to form in your life, because you get what you think about most of the time. So it's going to go to that instead. So you could be thinking, be like, well, why isn't my life changing? I've been thinking a little more positively. That's great, and that is a great step, and we want to keep moving forward from there. But you're going to get what you think about most of the time, because whatever you're thinking about most of the time is being activated or lit up in the field, and therefore coming into your life. It is the thing in the field that's activated that you are entangled with, because you're entangled with it all, but you're lighting up and communicating with that specific thing in the field, right? And these are some of my ideas as well with that, but that's how it's basically playing out from my eyes, is you are activating that, all of it's available, but you are activating whatever that thing is in the field because you're focusing on it, you're directing your thoughts towards that. That is basically your inner world doing that, which then the outer follows, and you get the equivalent of that. Again, it becomes that denser rate of physical vibration because you have activated and lit up this thing longer than anything else. And it would be very interesting if we could see, and maybe we can, but for most of us we can't, we could see what's activated in our field. And if we took a look at someone's life, and let's say they're living a life less than ideal than what they want, and we then looked at their field and what's lit up, it would be like, well, no wonder, because we would see lit up in their field all of these negative components, all of these things they focused on that then were just brought in their life because they were lighting up and giving their attention to those things in the inner world, which activated those things in the field, which after enough time created enough denser rate of vibration that those things came into their lives. So again, we need to be concerned about what we are activating or focusing on when it comes to our inner world. Remembering that the outer follows the inner. So it's crucial that we are aware of what we are activating inwardly that's then creating what shows up or being drawn to us physically. Again, I put focus under that because what are we focused on? Where focus goes, energy flows. So the longer you focus on something, the more you invite whatever that thing is into your life. Again, we do this through how we think, feel, speak, and act. Those are kind of the main things that are within our control as creators. How we think and how we feel, having to do with that inner world, speak and act are outer world things, but they're usually dependent on how we're thinking and feeling. Again, how you're thinking and feeling will lead to how you are speaking and acting. If you're thinking positively, you're thinking well, you're activating those things, you're probably going to speak in that same manner and also act from that place. And same with feeling for those other two as well. And so that is our tools of creation, but what we are activating and focusing on will determine what we actually create. So this brings me to the buffet analogy, which I mentioned before. And so what I want you to imagine is ultimately that there's this universal buffet, and it's infinite. So there's every kind of dish, everything is available in this buffet. And there's just nothing off limits, absolutely everything, so it extends all the way out. And how most people are creating, and again, this buffet is an inner world activity, how most people are creating is they're in front of something at the buffet, so like right here, and they're eating this thing at the buffet, and they basically are going, I do not like this thing that I'm eating. But instead of trying to, let's go to this thing in the buffet, let's go to this thing in the buffet that I might enjoy, maybe I'll enjoy this thing in the buffet. So essentially choosing a different thing in the buffet, they stick with the same thing. They complain about whatever it is they're eating. Perhaps they start arguing with the chef. So let's say here's a little chef, and each chef is making basically their dish. So they're arguing and complaining and trying to get the chef, whose job is just to make that dish. That's his job or her job. It doesn't matter. It's what they're commissioned to do. And they're trying to get them to change it to something else rather than just moving and switching your focus to something else in the buffet that you would actually enjoy. And this is how most people are going about their lives, unfortunately, and why they don't create much of what they want, because they're focused, again, from that inner world and are activating ultimately these things from the inner world that they do not like. They are focused on the negativity in their life and complaining about it. They're focused on, I don't like that person or judging that person or whatever else it is. They are focused on the lack in their life. They are focused on all of these different things that activate those things in the field and then recreate whatever they're activating physically. Again, if we were to look at their field and what they're activating, it would be all lit up on the negative side. We would see that they have been partaking in the side of the buffet that brings about a lot of struggle and a lot of strife and whatever else it is. And so the key here, when it comes to the buffet and how we can get this to work for ourselves, is we want to choose, don't change. And what that means is stop trying to change whatever it is in the buffet that you don't like. Because everything exists. Absolutely every possibility. You're entangled with it all. It's all available there, right? Everything exists in that respect. So there's everything in the buffet. You can't just decide, I don't want this thing to exist anymore. It's not a power you have, and it's not something you can do, right? Oh, I don't want this thing to exist, so I'm going to fight it to get rid of it. All you do is then glue yourself to whatever it is that you're now giving your attention to in the buffet as you try to change it, right? Now you're trying to change this thing, which means you're giving it your attention and your focus, and you're activating it more and more in your life. Have you ever noticed when you try to fight things in your life, it seems to exacerbate whatever the thing is? Or maybe you defeat it, and then a week later, the same thing in a different form shows up in your life? Well, this is exactly why. Because you're trying to change something that's you can't change. And so you end up just giving it more focus. So instead of trying to change, you choose differently. Stop activating the thing you don't want in your life anymore, right? And start choosing something else in the buffet that you would rather focus, something else in the field that you would rather activate. This is why we talk so much about changing your thoughts, and again, choosing new thoughts, I should say there, just to stay with the nomenclature we're using here, but choosing new thoughts, not trying to wrestle with whatever, has been getting you up to this point, to choose new things in the inner world rather than worrying on, I need to change this or whatever. You can't change it. The 99.1 radio station is going to be there regardless of what you do. You can't change the station and make it be something else. But you absolutely could be like, I don't want to be on 99.1. I want to be on 105.5. Fantastic. Even when you're on 105.5, 99.1 still exists. It's still in the buffet, but it won't affect you because you're not on it. You're not activating it. But you have no right to try and destroy it or change it or mold it in the what you think it should be, right? No, it just exists, and you decide which ones you're going to activate or participate on. Everything in the field is there. You can't just go up to something and be like, I need you to change. I'm going to turn you into something different. Instead, choose the thing you want rather than trying to change whatever's in front of you to what you think you want, right? Choose the thing you want inwardly that's already out there. It all exists. There is a reality that where you're abundant and you have amazing relationships and all of these different things. Don't try and change 99.1, that station, to be that. Move onto the station, the place in the buffet, and activate that inwardly. Again, assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Have more faith in the vision than the current physical circumstances. And that's what will start to be produced in your life. Now, also from the field, this quote here, the field contains all knowledge and wisdom. We simply need to tap into it. Again, that's coming from that same book. So it's all there, right? You don't have to recreate it. You don't have to change something into something it naturally is not. You just need to get in line and activate it and tap into whatever the thing is that you want to bring into your life. You need to only activate it, which honestly is good news, even though a lot of people might want to fight this, because you don't have to create it. You just have to activate something that's already contained within creation. When we talk about creating your reality, what you're really doing is tapping into things that are already within this universe, already in reality, and drawing them to you. Again, it's more attraction than creation in that way. Creation is still a good word to use, and it paints a very vivid picture because you are creating it in a sense. You're like sending in the order to the factory that already knows how to make everything and that basically makes it for you if you activate it long enough, right? But the field contains all of it. The buffet is all of it. So stop trying to change something in the buffet you don't like and you have this moral thing against, I don't like this, I need to change it, because at the very least, it's just not going to work. So even if you're coming from a good intention and you think you're in the morally right place, by fighting it, you're not going to do anything to it because every station exists, everything in the field exists. Again, all wisdom, all knowledge, all potentialities, it exists. The one that you will frequent or live is the one that you give your attention and you activate. So we want to choose, not change. We choose via our thinking through that inner world work we do, taking the inspired action, and we'll go over, again, some things you can do to actually practically do this in just a second. So here's some things that you can do in order to more effectively adhere to everything we've already talked about. Now, of course, I can't go over everything, but I'm going to give you some things alongside what you just learned to think about and start applying. And again, you just need to start with this, right? You don't need to know it all right away. You just want to get started so that you're able to create more in the ways that you want, right? Now, the first one is awareness. Now, through this video, you are learning more of the rules to the game. We went over a few concepts, for example, that the outer follows the inner. We went over polarity. I mentioned vibration, principle of vibration, how basically the physical world and the energetic are one and the same. You're of a like kind. You learned that basically we are entangled with everything. Again, these are rules to the game that if you dive more into or already can bring yourself to have faith in and believe, put you ahead of so many different people who are ignorant to the real rules to the game, right? A lot of people are living through life, and let's say it's like a video game, but they're trying to operate from a rule set that's incorrect. Or another analogy I like, let's say you're driving on the road and everyone's driving on the road, but nobody knows how the road works. They've been given the wrong rules. They think red means green, left means right, and so it would be utter chaos with people going nowhere. But if you knew the true rules to the road and you had a destination, you'd be able to easily start moving in that direction because you know how the actual game or rules to the road operate. And so the first thing we want to do is have that awareness to what's really going on. Because if you think you're just a physical being, you're going to struggle in the game. If you think Newtonian physics is the base reality, you're going to struggle in the game. If you think that the way to change your life is to manipulate the physical stuff around you and change it rather than choosing, you're going to struggle in the game, right? And that's how a lot of people are operating. So the first thing is to learn the rules of the game. Again, you've learned a lot in this video. If you want extra help with this and to really go the full way with this, you can check out my membership, Bold Your Reality, where we teach you the exact rules to the game, how to do this, how to activate what you need to activate. You get coaching, accountability, and so much more. I'll pop some results up so you can see that we're getting phenomenal results with this. And again, this is something where if you just do the work and trust the process, you're going to get the results, because we're going to show you exactly what to do. We're not going to make it mysterious. It's going to be very clear, and you're going to get the whole rule book, essentially, right? That we can't cover in just one video like this. Now, the next thing you need is to remember about thought and intention. Going back to the quote from the field, our directed thought is the primary or central thing that creates reality. You get what you think about most of the time. Most people are not training their thinking. A lot of people will go train their body because they value the physical, but they don't train their thinking, which is what the physical is coming from. Again, the outer is born from the inner. And yet many people do not train the inner world. You have 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day. What are those thoughts activating and tying themselves to it as far as quantum entanglement? What are those thoughts activating in the field for you? And if you don't know, that probably means not favorable stuff. Or if you do know and it's more negative, we need to train your mind. We need to train your attention. Why is attention the hottest commodity now for huge corporations? Why is it that all of these things are free and you go, oh, you're not paying for it, but you absolutely are through your attention. They want your attention. Why is our attention hijacked? Right? Because they understand the value of attention and how that creates and how they can use your power against you to create what they want for themselves. Right? Your attention has been hijacked because they're aware of the real rules to the game. And for those who are more nefarious and want to control, they use those rules of the game in order to manipulate. They understand the power of thought and intention. They understand how to hijack that. And so you want to get out of that hijack and get the tendrils out of you that are controlling you and be more intentional with your thoughts. Because if you're not, someone else will. If you're not creating for yourself, someone will hijack that and absolutely get you to create something. Most likely it doesn't benefit you and benefit someone else's agenda, corporation, whatever else it is. And that's not a call to play the victim here. That's not going to help you. That's something they want. The same people and groups want you to feel like a victim, because if you feel like a victim, you're not being a creator. There is no creator, a true person who's embodied creatorship, that has an ounce of victimhood in them, right? Again, you can build your way up to that, but you can't be both. Right? You got to choose. So ultimately, train your thoughts and intention. I've gone over mental diet. I've gone over other things, about reading certain books and all this, watching these videos, applying them, monitoring your thoughts through the bouncer of the mind technique. Ultimately, what that is, imagine there's a bouncer at the doorway of your mind, and it is trained, and you train it over and over, over time, to only let in the thoughts that serve you and activate what you want, and to turn away, like a bouncer would, anything that doesn't serve you in that way. Now, some might slip through or whatever, but we just want to get to a tipping point and then build from there. Again, if you can get to the point where 51% of your thoughts are directed consciously in the way you want them to go, and even unconsciously once you train it to a certain extent, that's when your ability to create goes through the roof. That's when, again, at that point, you have 30 to 40,000 thoughts a day directed and activating what you want in the field, which again, whatever's lighting up the most from there is most likely or usually what's going to be created. So thought, intention, you want to train it, do the bouncer of the mind, and remember your attention is, why is it such a hot commodity? Right? There's a reason for it, because those who wish to control you or have agendas that require the thought power of a bunch of people, they're aware of these things. They're not ignorant to them. They understand the rules of the game of how reality works. Now, the third thing I would recommend is learning about pendulums, which are a tool of those same people, but make it really hard for you to think in the way that you want, thus making it very hard for you to activate what you want in the field if you're not aware of pendulums and you're not aware of how to stop them and direct your thoughts elsewhere. And so in this video, I go over what pendulums are, what thought forms are, and how you can get out of their resonant frequency or being hooked by them, and even use them to your advantage to basically do everything that we covered today.